Locked On Podcast Network presents Locked On Sports Today.
Damian Lillard put the Milwaukee Bucks on his back in Game 1 without Giannis. Also, the New Orleans Pelicans begin their playoff adventure without Zion, and this just might be the New York Rangers' year. This episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDON for $20 off of your first purchase.
I'm Peter Bukowski, starting your day with the can't-miss stories and biggest debates in sports. You're Locked On Sports Today.
Searching all major sports. Found.
Let's start with the biggest story.
Well, if you're a national NBA fan, it was Dame time. But I think if you're a Bucks fan, it might have been more like Portis time, because, boy, that was a very fun game to watch between the Milwaukee Bucks and the Indiana Pacers. The Bucks absolutely rout the Pacers. And here to help break it all down is Camille Davis, half of the Locked On Bucks podcast. Camille, when it comes down to this game, obviously the biggest story is that the Bucks were without Giannis Antetokounmpo, their best player. So what was it about this game? And look, this is the second year in a row they've had to do this in the first round, right? So what was it that made it different this year?
Damian Lillard. That's the quick, easy answer for this one. This is exactly why you go out and you make a trade for a player like Damian Lillard, someone who can get that offense rolling. Because if you look at the Bucks in past years, one of the biggest problems for the Milwaukee Bucks has been their offense. It tends to stall come playoff time a lot, especially given the fact that in Buckster's rosters of old, the biggest shot creators were Chris Middleton and Giannis Antetokounmpo. And that was really it. With the years with Jrue Holiday, they entrusted a lot of offensive load onto Jrue Holiday's shoulders as well. But playoff time, Jrue admitted himself, like, I am so locked in on defense. Sometimes the offense can slip a little bit. So it's a situation here with having Damian Lillard. You saw it in this game. All 35 of his points came in the first half, and the Bucks needed every single one. It was such a statement for him to come out, have such an explosive half like that, a half that no Bucks player has ever had in playoff history, a half that Dame has never had in his illustrious career to this point. So it's one of those moments that you're going to remember as a Bucks fan, in large part because you were wondering how the team would look without Giannis. Where are the points going to come from? How is the Pacers defense going to press the Bucks? And Dame had a lot of answers for him in the first half.
There are a lot of people who have already made some comments around Dame scoring 35 in the first half and then being scoreless in the second half. Is that something that you're concerned with at all? Because to me, it feels like scoring 35 points in a game is pretty good. If you can just get that out of the way in the second half and play defense, or get that out of the way in the first half, play defense in the second half, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I mean, that's one way to look at it for sure. I mean, 35 points in the first half, that is more than what Jrue Holiday had ever scored in a playoff game for the Bucks. His high was 33, or more than the previous Bucks point guard, Eric Bledsoe. His career high in the playoffs for the Bucks was 27. So getting 35 in the first half, that's quite a scoring load to carry. And the Pacers adjusted. What you expect them to do? They have a great coach. They made some adjustments. They pressed Dame full court a lot in the second half. You were seeing two bodies. They were denying. They were trapping. They wanted the ball out of his hands. They wanted it to be anybody else but Dame. In the second half, you saw Chris Middleton really come to life. You saw Bobby Portis really take on that scoring load when Dame wasn't on the court or when Dame was getting pressed as well. You saw some key role guys hitting big threes down the stretch when they needed them, with Malik Beasley. Even Jay Crowder in his limited time hit a really big three while he was on the court. So second half, it was more so, hey, anybody but Dame, and the Bucks were able to find enough offense to get that done. But going forward, I do hope to see the Bucks start kind of creating some of those second actions for Dame off ball, if that is the way that the Pacers are going to be playing him defensively.
Yeah, that was sort of, I kind of wanted to go in that direction next about sustainability, right? I think Dame was asked about that in his post-game, preview. It's not every game that you're going to have Brook Lopez coming down on the rafters and, clearing, dunking on people and all this other stuff. So how do you create a sustainable product without Giannis with what you saw tonight? Where do some of the corrections need to come in order to do that?
The ball movement was good. I mean, the Bucks got a lot of good looks in that third quarter that just did not seem to drop for them during that stretch. So it's about making sure the ball continues to move. That's been a problem for the Bucks under Doc this season so far. When their offense stalls, it's normally because it becomes too ISO heavy. Enough guys aren't seeing the ball. The offense gets a little bit easier to guard because they're not trying to force defenders out of position with ball movement. They're not making guys scramble. So it's going to be on the Bucks offense to be creative enough with some off-ball actions, with how they're screening, with the secondary actions, if the first option is denied, and how they score out of that. But again, a lot of that comes back to Chris Middleton, who was super valuable for this team during the game. Like, a question that I had without Giannis in the game was, what do the non-Dame minutes look like for this team? And against the Pacers in game one, the Bucks were plus 21 in the score column with Dame on the bench. And you have to win those types of minutes. So that's going to be something that's also big for the Bucks going forward in this series.
Yeah, that's huge. I mean, they went out and got Dame for a reason. They went out and they hired Doc Rivers for a reason. They wanted to be able to be a postseason team. How much does getting Giannis back when that happens? I mean, what does that do for this team as we look forward?
It adds a whole nother dynamic for this team. The Bucks are really top heavy. That's just the reality of the way the roster was constructed. It's constructed around Giannis and Dame and Chris. And those three, in addition to be the Bucks leading scorers, they are also the Bucks primary ball handlers, the three of them. So if you take any one of them out for an extended period of time, like that takes away another playmaker for this team. Giannis puts so much pressure on the rim, and that's what got Dame shooting going in the first half as well. He was able to get pressure on the rim, which allowed him to also get some really good looks from behind that three-point line and set up his teammates as well. So you add Giannis back in, great driver. You have that presence of putting the pressure on the rim. You have somebody who's going to look for teammates. And honestly, you have a big body that the Pacers have shown through the regular season that they didn't have too many answers for on how to stop. Now, they do have Siakam now, so that'll be an interesting matchup once Giannis does get reintroduced into this series. But Giannis plays very, very well against the Pacers, and I would expect that to continue with the playoffs and the stakes a bit higher once he returns.
Stay up to date all year long on the Milwaukee Bucks by subscribing to Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Bucks on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. Thanks for making Locked On Sports Today your first listen. Coming up next, the New Orleans Pelicans begin their playoff story without Zion. Before we get to that, the first 2 days of playoff action were mostly blowouts. With killer last-minute deals, all-in pricing, and their best price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. They're obsessed with finding ways to help you save money on tickets. Game Time has deals on tickets right up to the start of the event and even an hour after it starts. It's the place to find last-minute seats. Find exclusive flash deals and sponsored deals on tickets for football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. And with zone deals, you pick the section and Game Time picks the seats for big time savings. And the Game Time guarantee means that you'll always get the best price if you find tickets in the same section and row for less. Game Time will refund you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app and new users can get $20 off of their first purchase with code Locked On. Terms apply. That's code Locked On for $20 off of your first purchase with Game Time. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Are you watching Fox Sports and ESPN on your TV all day, having to turn the volume down from all the shouting? Well, make the switch today to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 streaming channel that is programmed for you every day without all of the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you the can't miss stories, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or on the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. The Los Angeles Lakers have got to be getting tired of Nikola Jokic and the Nuggets.
They're all hanging out and wondering what the Lakers might be able to do to get over the proverbial hump against the Nuggets. They've lost now 9 in a row against the Nuggets, following a 114-103 loss in Game 1 up in Denver, first round of the playoffs. Andy, this is significant on a few levels. First of all, it is the sad demise of the undefeated record of the new theme. I was really hoping that would last longer. But more importantly, the Lakers, as a group, had certainly alluded to it. LeBron James was pretty explicit about it. The Lakers would need to play fairly close to flawless basketball to beat the Nuggets in this series. Game 1 was not that on a lot of levels, and it showed.
I thought they had a really good first half. I thought they looked like a team that understood the task ahead of them in the first half. And I thought for them, it was not perfect because The Lakers are not good enough to be perfect, and Denver is too good to be perfect against. But I thought for the most part in the first half, they did a really nice job.
The Minnesota Timberwolves gave the Phoenix Suns a rude welcome.
My God, what a performance by that young man. Just single-handedly took over that game, at least on offense. And while the rest of the team is a real high-level, concerted team effort on defense and on the boards, they dominated Phoenix on the boards for the first time all season, where they 59 rebounds to 34.
Jeez.
That is an outlandish differential. And the last couple games, turnovers have been a big issue. They had fewer turnovers in this game than they had in the first half of their last game against the Suns. Offensive rebounds to the Suns have been an issue. They allowed 3 tonight. So from top to bottom throughout this roster, I know we can nitpick with some of the shooting from Conley, some of the offensive fouls with Cat, but no one on this team had a out and out awful game. Every single player showed up.
The Boston Celtics wasted no time setting the standard for the Miami Heat.
Part of the Celtics offense just destroying what Miami was trying to do defensively was Jason Tatum giving up the ball when he was blitzed, when he was doubled, when they committed 2 to Tatum. That puts the Celtics in a position to play 4-on-3. And I'll take Boston's remaining 4, Jaylen Brown, Kristaps Porzingis, Derek White, Drew Holiday, against any 3 that anybody's going to throw out there if you're committing 2 to Jason Tatum. It's a trade-off the Celtics are willing to make, and Tatum has done a great job of accepting the double team. There's a formula here for beating Miami.
On the playoff ice, the Boston Bruins dominated the Toronto Maple Leafs on the ice.
During the third period of Game 1 between the Boston Bruins and the Toronto Maple Leafs, the Sportsnet broadcast cut to commercial with Same Old Song and Dance by Aerosmith, and that's because the Boston Bruins were well on their way to victory in this one. This is Ian McLaren, host of Locked On Boston Bruins, and Boston took this Game 1 by a score of 5-1 thanks to a couple power play goals from Jake DeBrusk, a game opening goal by Johnny Beecher, and he played fantastic, by the way. Brandon Carlo scored as well, and Trent Frederick with the empty netter to seal this one. Jeremy Swayman was so strong in net, and he raises questions as to whether Jim Montgomery will stick with the goalie rotation or if he'll go back to Swayman, who's a perfect 4-0 against Toronto this season. The Bruins haven't trailed against the Maple Leafs all season long. Catch all the latest on Locked On Boston Bruins.
And on the diamond, the Atlanta Braves were beaten by a big 4th inning by the Texas Rangers.
Streak comes to an end, as all good things do, but unfortunately, Braves not able to get a sweep. But as you said, got a series win over the defending World Series champions. You got to keep that in mind too. This is a good team with a good offense. I know they're missing some guys in the rotation, but a really good team. So still, to be able to get a series win against them, another just positive for this Braves teams in this early season.
A feather in the cowboy hat, if you will, for the Atlanta Braves, because they bucked the odds and went ahead and messed with Texas over the last week and won 5 out of 6. That's still pretty good. Tack that on to the 2 out of 3 they took from the Marlins to start that road trip. And overall, the Braves are on a really nice run of baseball right now. Even with their loss on Sunday, still one of the best records in the game. They just continue to play, I think, extremely well. Jake, if they keep continuing to win series and they do that all the way through the end of the year, I've heard that really, really good things happen. And this is a club that's certainly capable of winning series.
The New Orleans Pelicans at least made it interesting in a early playoff run in the NBA that otherwise was full of blowouts. So at least this one was competitive for a little while. Here to help break down the loss for the Pelicans and what's next is Jake Madison here from Locked On Pelicans. Getting to do this in person because we're both here in New Orleans, which is kind of nice outside of the general temperature of the evening after that loss.
It's going to be a little bit down here in New Orleans after losing to the Thunder 94-92 in Game 1.
Yeah, not great. So look, they went into this game starting their playoff journey without Zion Williamson, but if we're being honest, that didn't seem to be the biggest issue for this team.
No, it looked like they were also without Brandon Ingram and CJ McCollum in this one too, right? Brandon Ingram had just 12 points on 15 shot attempts. That's horrible. That's not going to get it done in the postseason. CJ McCollum had 20 points, but it took him 22 attempts to get there. He was just 2 of 9 from 3. Look, your star players have to carry you in the playoffs, and straight up for the Pelicans, they did not do a good job. They were bad in this one. The role players played really well. The defense was really good, limiting a guy like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Your star players, Brandon Ingram, CJ McCollum, were supposed to take you home, and they didn't in this game, and it's the reason they lost.
Yeah, so they had a chance late to maybe steal away home field advantage or home court advantage. They end up with the kind of prayer ball from CJ McCollum. That could have been a real opportunity for them. Is the real big adjustment for them moving forward just those two playing to the stature of where they're supposed to be?
Yeah, if you get performances from Jonas Valanciunas, who's a big question mark heading into this game, the way you did from him, he held his own with Chet Holmgren in this one. You had Trey Murphy starting in place of Zion, be the leading scorer for the team with 21 points. It's on CJ McCollum's shoulders. It's on Brandon Ingram's shoulders. But that final play really summed everything up.
Yeah.
After a timeout, the fact that one guy gets the ball, can't shake open, you don't draw up any sort of action, any off-ball movement, and they just chuck up a prayer that missed. It was closer than you would have expected, but you need to have some sort of offense in the half court, and that's where New Orleans really struggled in this one, and that final play really showed it.
Yeah, I think you said in your show that the process is more important than the result. That feels like that is also indicative of the entire evening.
It's been indicative of their season at times, right? There's a lot of talent on this team. They have a big three. They have really good role players in Herb Jones, Trey Murphy, and others. But for some reason, they just haven't been able to put it all together. And that showed up in game one. You have some really standout performances, but it takes more than that to win a playoff game, especially against a rested team when you're on 1 day of rest here. And New Orleans just has shown all year long they haven't been able to figure some things out, but they're close.
Yeah. So you're trying to get Zion back if you're the Pelicans here. How far do you feel like they would have to extend this series in order to get that? And what kind of a boost would that bring this team?
Yeah, that's maybe the biggest loss of this. It's not simply just winning game one. It's extending this series. Zion will be reevaluated the day of game 5. I doubt he plays in that, but maybe that means game 6, game 7. If you can force a series to there, you have reinforcements in one of the best players in the league and Zion Williamson coming back. The Pelicans desperately need this to go further if they want to make any sort of a postseason run, because they're not going to do it without Zion Williamson. To not extend this series, give him more time to get back, get healthy, that's a huge disappointment.
Stay up to date all year long on the New Orleans Pelicans by subscribing to Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Pelicans on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. And coming up, this could be the year the New York Rangers get it done. We've all been there, either as a player or a fan. It's halftime. The scoreboard's not looking good. You're feeling low. You're not sure if your team can pull out a win, but that's when you got to dig deep, lift your head up and say to yourself, it's time to get back into the game, pull off some bank heists, and take as much of my friends' money as I possibly can. That's right. The smash hit mobile game Monopoly Go lets you compete with your friends to get the most riches and the biggest empire. It's the Monopoly that you love, but on your phone, anytime, with tons of new twists, including leaderboards to compare your progress to your buddies. And there's so much to do, like play on countless dynamic Monopoly boards, make your friends bankrupt by smashing their landmarks with a wrecking ball. Or you can even charge other players rent for your iconic properties. You can even work with your friends to crack community chests and in tournaments to get extra rewards to climb the leaderboard. So get back out there, put on your game face, and download Monopoly Go now, free on the App Store or Google Play. The New York Rangers are entering the NHL playoffs, having scored the most points this season and look poised to make a deep playoff run. However, it's been 30 years since the last time that the Rangers won the Stanley Cup, but Locked On Rangers host John Chick tells Locked On NHL host Gil Martin why they will end the drought.
You know, they just go out there and go to work. I think that's where it begins. When you watch that first goal that they scored, I mean, I was thinking about this when it happened. Like, that's the kind of goal that, like, if a first line scores a goal like that, it's very impressive. You know, they zip in there on the rush. They do a great job, you know, keeping the puck away from any kind of defenders. A couple of nice passes, guys under duress, making good passes. And, you know, Matt Rempe's there on the doorstep and he finishes. And, you know, Rempe, I mean, he's kind of a lightning rod. We know that, you know, both for Ranger fans and fans of other teams who might not like him very much. But he's one of those guys, like, I really don't think he's a one-trick pony. Everybody just kind of sees him as the guy that goes out there and fights, and he's the goon and this and that. He's got better speed than people realize for a big player. And he's one of those guys, he can set up shop in front of the net. And if he doesn't want to move, I mean, good luck moving Matt Rempe out of there. So I honestly think, like, at one time or another in his career, he might get around like 20 points a season. It's not going to be like point per game or anything ridiculous like that. And of course, he doesn't have a ton of ice time to work with, and he's going to mostly be on the fourth line. But I don't think that's an unattainable like kind of milestone for him. And for the other guys, I mean, Jimmy Vesey's one of those guys that just busts his tail every single game. And Barclay Goodrow, you got to feel happy for him because he's one of those guys that does come under fire from Ranger fans from time to time. You know, they see his salary. I think it's like $3.6 million. And it's like, oh, he's a fourth liner. He never scores and this and that. And it's like, you know, that guy puts his hard hat on every night. And nice to see him get rewarded with a multi-point game. I'm pretty sure he had 2 assists in this game, in game 1 of the playoffs. So just great stuff all around from that fourth line. And again, one of many reasons why I think this is a very encouraging win for the Rangers.
What did you see out there in game 1 that maybe has you a little bit concerned?
There wasn't anything too concerning, I wouldn't say. I mean, I thought, you know, physically the Rangers were right there with them. I haven't checked the stats as far as like hits and whatnot, but I guess, you know, a couple of the things coming into the series, if there was anything I could look at and, you know, kind of point to, and okay, maybe that might be a little bit of an issue. Physicality, although the Rangers' physicality is very underrated. I've been saying that on my show all year. I just think that the Caps, you know, give them credit. You know, they battled their way into the playoffs despite being a team that sold at the trade deadline, and they're here and they earn their spot just like everybody else. But I feel like, you know, from an offensive perspective, they're not on the same level as the Rangers. So one thing that kind of concerns me is like, at what point are the Caps going to try to like kind of drag the Rangers down into the mud and just make this an absolute slog of a series? I think that's probably their best chance. We'll see if they kind of go with that kind of an approach in game 2. And the other thing that gave me some worry too was Charlie Lindgren was hot down the stretch. And I felt like he's kind of an underrated goalie in the first place. But to see the Rangers beat him clean a couple of times, that was very encouraging too. You know, the goals that the Rangers were scoring, they were legit. I mean, these were not like lucky bounces or impossible to stop deflections. They beat him clean a couple of times, and that kind of alleviated, you know, some of my concerns. He's still a very good goalie. He made some good saves in this game. He'll make some good saves the rest of the way too. But I think the Rangers can get the puck by him. I think they showed that here today.
Nancy Corda is unstoppable. She has 5 straight tournament wins on the LPGA Tour and counting. The world's #1 player hasn't lost a tournament since January, and now she's a 2-time major champion. Corda joins Nancy Lopez from 1978, as well as Annika Sorensen from 2004-2005, as the only players to win 5 consecutive LPGA events. No one has won 6 in a row yet. Maybe Nancy Corda will add that to her already impressive 2024. Are you watching Fox Sports and ESPN on your TV all day? Got to turn it down because of all the shouting? Well, make the switch to Locked On Sports Today. It's a 24/7 free sports streaming channel programmed for you to get the biggest stories in sports every day without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you all of the can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or on the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Coming up on the next Locked On Sports Today, can LeBron James and the Los Angeles Lakers finally get a win against the Denver Nuggets? So at least until tomorrow, stay Locked On Sports Today.
Locked On Podcast Network presents Locked On Sports Today.
For more episodes of Locked On Sports Today, go to our video on demand. Click on Sports at the top of your screen. There, you'll find past episodes of Locked On Sports Today, plus other Locked On shows on demand.